Welcome to another episode of Strive 365, where we help and guide you to live a better life, whether it be mentally, physically, emotionally, or spiritually. I am your host, Justin Arnold. I have a question for you before we start today's episode. Are you an entrepreneur, a solarpreneur, a parent, a human being who feels stuck or misaligned? Well, great news. Today's guest is Matt Gallo, and he helps people get unstuck. He helps people with these issues, whether it be one-on-one coaching, group masterminds, immersion retreats in nature, which is something I recently did with him, which was amazing. So there we go. You will find some super valuable information in this episode. So Matt, welcome to the show. Why don't you introduce yourself to the fine folks that are listening?
Introduce myself. First of all, happy Groundhog's Day. I just noticed that's today.
It is.
I don't know if that's a holiday that you recognize, but for me, growing up in New York City, it's a thing. There's this groundhog where I live. I think they're replacing it every year. There's no way this groundhog lives that long. And if he sees his shadow, then that means two more weeks. Yeah, 2 more weeks of winter. If he doesn't, then we're closer to spring. And personally, I feel like we haven't had a winter yet here in New York.
Yes,
down south.
So for those that don't know you, where exactly are you located?
I'm currently located in Staten Island, New York, the southernmost point of New York State, the Lost Borough.
The Lost Borough? I don't know if I've ever heard it called that. Why is it called the Lost Borough?
There's a number of reasons I can make up right now, and one of them being we're pretty detached from the rest of New York City. So, there's 5 boroughs: New York City, Brooklyn, Queens, Manhattan, the Bronx, and then Staten Island. And it's just harder to get here. You need to go over a bridge. There's a few bridges that come here, or take a ferry. I'm a stone's throw away from New Jersey. Yeah, and it doesn't feel like New York City when you're here. That's what it really means. That's what I interpret it as. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, so a city of a million or so people, where houses are stacked on top of each other. And then when I was about 17 and 18, I moved out here, and it was just so different. It reminded me, when I moved out here, it reminded me of the summers I would spend in upstate New York, and you're familiar with upstate, like the Adirondacks, the Catskill area. My family had a house up there where we'd go, and you know how there's houses very much spread apart. You had acreage, you had space to roam, right? Like the bison, and you couldn't do that in Brooklyn. And when I moved out to Staten Island, that's what we had the opportunity to do. There was actually greenery. It's also known as the borough of parks, because there's just parks everywhere. And that's where I'm located currently.
The forgotten
Staten Island.
Yeah, I would think about like the middle child or the adopted or somebody, like something going on. It's interesting. My brother lives in Queens, Astoria, and you talk about those houses. So I envisioned what you were saying there for what you're speaking of, but then I've also lived in countryside Western Illinois, growing up on my grandma's farm, and then just what that is, running in those fields. So as you're telling this story, I can just envision it. So 17 years old, that's a new fun fact. So let's go there, man. You said you moved there when you were 17. Why?
Yeah, so my parents were divorcing, and at 17, I was a senior in high school, and I was going to high school in Brooklyn at the time. And for some reason, we decided to move out of the house that we had in Brooklyn. There were some financial reasons associated with that too. We couldn't keep up the mortgage payments, from what I remember. And so we moved out to this small, it wasn't that small. It was an apartment in Staten Island, first floor apartment in this 2-story, like 2-family home. It was actually a beautiful neighborhood. And yeah, we moved out there without my dad. And I actually had a car, so I was commuting every day to high school, which felt so cool, man. I felt like the coolest kid in school because I had a morning commute.
What were you
And I
driving?
remember I was driving
I
a
have to know.
2004 Hyundai Elantra
Whoa,
silver
you're rolling, man. That's high school.
with a sunroof. Oh
Dude,
man.
pimp.
And yeah, I remember I had a pretty long drive and I was like thinking about things. I was thinking about traffic, like, oh, I got to beat the traffic to get there. And it was a 45-minute drive for me to get to high school. And I would, get in my car and I'd stop at the deli on the way and I'd pick up a pack of cigarettes and a coffee and, it'd be living the dream
Interesting.
at that point, or what I thought was the dream at that point, even though my life was literally a disaster at home at the time. And we lived there. We lived in that house for about 6 months and then moved to another place and then moved back to Brooklyn and then back to Staten Island. It was just a bunch of years of this back and forth, not really having a grounded place to be. And what a time.
So you do some amazing things, and I want to connect the dots, or at least try to. Like, if you go to this guy's profile, it says guide leaders, game changers, adventurous entrepreneurs to build incredibly fulfilling lives and provide for their growing families. So hearing a little snippet of that time, do you think that contributed to what you're doing now? And I can attest, before you said it, I can attest to myself, just meeting this guy. He's definitely got a passion for what he does. He's definitely not only striving himself, but he's really working to help others strive every day. And that's why he's on here today. So tell me about that. Is there a correlation connection?
That specific correlation is not one I had thought about yet. And looking back on all of those years, I do remember, and I remember some moments very specifically. I remember being in this new place, this new home, and enduring a lot of this stress and a lot of this discomfort and a lot of these like, lack of a better term, problems that I was having and experiencing in my life, right? Traumas. The world outside of me was what we can consider chaotic. And I was just having this conversation with a friend last week about the word chaos. I love that word.
Chaos.
Most people don't, right? I think chaos is cool. And for all, intents and purposes, I had chaos all around me. And yet I remember being this fun-loving and adventurous soul who also was a guide to others, someone who is in service. And I remember just, having friends come visit me, or I would be, hanging out with some of my friends as if nothing was chaotic. I remember having this ability to be completely and absolutely present in the moment. And it was pointed out to me once that I was very calm and very controlled in these environments, these experiences, this chaos. And I had not thought of it at all as anything special. I didn't think of it as something that was out of the ordinary. I thought it was just natural because I was just being myself.
Where do you think that comes? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll finish that and then I'll answer that question. As I developed as an entrepreneur, became a gym owner. Right? That was my career path for 9 years in my 20s, and then into what I'm doing now. I realized that I have this talent, this ability to sort of shut off the outside world, turn off the noise and focus inward, and also be able to reflect, serve as a mirror for other people. And I could do that regardless of the stress, regardless of what was going on, and sometimes to my own detriment. And this is an interesting concept that I now help other people to understand, which is how I can guide people to living more fulfilling lives. It's being able to be at peace with the chaos, accepting it for what it is. There's always going to be some troubles, and also, why would you let that prevent you from doing what you say you're going to do? Why would you let that prevent you from being yourself? And I find that when you get to be yourself, when you really are stepping into this role of the leader you were born to be, the person you want to be, the family man or woman, when you could do that as yourself, regardless of all this chaos, it makes things much more flowy, natural.
For sure.
And
yeah. And I believe, the data, but for those that are listening, you can Google it after this, but there's plenty of data to even show how the people who live in traumatic or grow up in traumatic, Matt knows a little bit of my story. I've shared it on this podcast a little bit. And there is a higher likelihood of compassion. There is finding calmness. There is loving others, serving. There is also the other side of it, where if you're hurt, you want to hurt others. But there is actually a lot of data that you have one or two directions. So there is that to go with it. But, you said so much there, and I want to try and cover some of this. We'll come to the yourself. I definitely want to come back to that. But you said, I'm just really curious, like I said, is this something like being yourself? Like, where did that come from to be able to calm? It's such a young age, I guess. People can grow into it, but it's such a young age. Where do you think that came from?
To pinpoint exactly where that started. It's a great question. Yeah.
If you're not sure, it's something that we can marinate on and come back to, because it's just curious sometimes where, just having that self-analyzation and that, just to be able to have that ability, because it's hard. I can talk from personally for many years, and it's still a challenge to, I have found an amazing productivity in stillness and in calmness. For me, I've had to actually have therapeutic discomfort to find the comfort in the productivity. For example, and we've talked a little bit on this, doing cold plunges for a few minutes, laying on an acupuncture midday for, 15 minutes, and I can, that discomfort I've actually fallen asleep on and then woken up with extreme productivity. So for me, it's had to do that. And for me personally, everybody's different. For me personally, that is a way to help guide me into a deeper meditative state, because we could trace it back to trauma. We could ADHD, lifestyle, a number of different reasons. But the point being is, this is what has always been a challenge. And I have had times where I've felt distracted, but by getting into that uncomfortable, even just for a few minutes, I can find calmness and peace. And when I come out of that, my mind is clearer to be able to get more stuff done. And that sounds like
you're
what you're
touching
talking about,
on some of the things that I frequently think about and talk about. And it's actually the reason why I create these events, these live events, which one of which you've attended.
Which was awesome.
And I'm continuing to expand and develop these. I realize that as entrepreneurs, people who are in business for themselves, but really I can think of an entrepreneur as a creator of their own universe. They're a creator of their own life,
I like
right?
that.
Meaning you make the decisions, you make the choices. And sometimes, ideally that the results of that, the outcome of that is some money, right? That's necessary, some fun, some energy, all of these great things. Anyway, it's typical for an entrepreneur to have this chaotic life. Would you agree with that? I imagine.
Yeah. There's
in many
even
ways.
meme. I just saw a meme the other day. Life
Yeah.
before entrepreneur, and it's like this really attractive looking man. Life as an entrepreneur. It's the same guy with wrinkles and gray hair, and it's like says like 5 years later or something like that.
Yeah, and so that's like the going belief, right? You can believe that, but it doesn't have to be that way.
I love that you just
And
said that.
yeah, what I notice is that happens because there's a couple of like limiting beliefs, we could call them. One of which being, I need to do it all myself, right? That's the limiting belief. When you have this like desire to be the one who does all the work and takes all the credit as well. But this is really what we consider a collapsed distinction. So that's a collapsed distinction is when you take two words and you combine them as if they are the same, right? They have the same definition and meaning and purpose. But this collapsed distinction is totally false. One of the words being service and the other one being sacrifice. And so what I find is many people, many entrepreneurs, leaders will combine service and sacrifice. I learned this from my mother, right? Because she was someone who gave up her entire world, her entire life to be a mother, right? Meaning the day that we were born, essentially, she decided that she no longer needed to work, fulfill her own passions or her own career or desires. And simply from that point forward, she was mom. And it falls into your identity like this. And so what I help people do in these events and in my coaching and in the work that I get to do with people is help them to unravel this distinction, right? So that you understand that service and sacrifice are two separate things. In fact, they need to exist without each other. And oftentimes that takes a little push over the edge. That takes getting to the edge of your comfort zone, like climbing to the top of a mountain, for example. Or at my next event that we're going to be doing some rock climbing. Some people may have the opportunity to do skydiving. This stuff is scary.
Yeah.
You ever stand on the edge of a cliff and look down? It could be a 10-foot tall cliff. It doesn't have to be very high.
Sure.
You suddenly feel a pit creeping down from your throat into your stomach, and it feels like an ever expanding black hole. And it's these things that allow you to remember, okay,
Yeah.
I can chill out. It also creates chemically and hormonally in your body, it creates a really good environment for new pathways, new neurological pathways to be created because of the amount of norepinephrine and dopamine that gets created as a result of this experience.
Oh, man.
Hence why when you jump in the ice and you trick your body into thinking that it's going to die, the result of that is a spike in dopamine.
Yeah.
Because it actually is triggering the fight or flight response.
Yeah. And I use it as a tool. You talk about that. I last night, I was really tired in this game. I had to leave by like 8:15. I'm not going to go down the detail of why I was so tired, but I was like, man, I'm not doing caffeine or something at 8 o'clock. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to jump in the cold plunge just for 3 minutes. And oh man, you would have think I just did whatever. And that led me for 2 more hours. And that's the same thing for me this morning. And it really fires me up. And it's an endorphin rush that goes and lasts a long time. And the reason I do that, you talked about a few things, man, that like the standing on the cliff and, you're right. You know, you talked about the definitely like the scientific part of it, the neurological pathways, the dopamine hits, and you know all the super benefits. But man, it just feels good, right? And I'll tell a little personal, like so this, and I believe familiar with this past speaking of the Adirondacks earlier, with this past August, my daughter who turned 13 wanted to go hike the highest peak in New York State, which is Mount Marcy. She's like, let's do it. I was like, do you know what you're asking for? This is going to be an all-day thing. Could be anywhere from 8 to 12 hours, depending, because we've got 5 of us. We've got a 7-year-old. And so she said, yes, that's what I want as my gift. Okay, we did a camping trip in the Adirondacks near Lake Placid. And we got up early. We were all in it. For those that are familiar, I did the loop. So we hit up 2 other peaks on the way. And the reason why I did this, because I knew it was really super steep to go out and back. The loop was a little bit gradual and it was easier to go down. I'm using a pen as a visual as if somebody's watching this, but people might, but still the point is, like, it was easier in my mind. I imagined it for my 7-year-old to go gradually up and then back down, which I was right. But you talk about standing on that cliff. And then what I would add to it is it was pretty warm at the bottom. It's August. You get to the top, it was like 30 degrees, and all of a sudden wind gusts, no wind. And I was with my youngest because the other 3 were a little behind us. We could see them, but a little behind. And when that wind gust came, all I could think about was my daughter's safety. This thing could have taken her. And so there's that, which has a rush as well. And it was just this feeling. So when we got out of it and we're all safe and we got more into flatter grounds through the trees, it was just like, we all stopped and we were all just like my wife said it before me, and it was just, she's like, I felt God up there. And it was just like this power statement. And she's like, and my wife, who cries, and we joke about this, so this is nothing, who cries like twice a year, and I cry twice a day, I jokingly say, she cried. And she was emotional, and that's such a rare sight. And to give people an idea, it doesn't mean go climb a mountain, but this is why he provides these experiences. Same thing with skydiving. My skydiving experience, a little personal one, I'll make this short and sweet, was the Cessna we were flying on. At first I was like, man, this is crazy. What am I doing? And to give you a little story, my wife was 6 or 7 months pregnant with our 3rd child, and I had no life insurance at the time. I'm a smart guy. But as soon as I got on that plane and it's shaking and rusted floorboard, I couldn't wait to get on that plane. All right, I was so excited. Like, I was more scared of being on that plane than I was jumping in the air. And I'll tell you what, man, that was just an incredible, and it's something I will do again. I plan to do again. Oh, wait, if my insurance company listening, I'm never going to do that ever again, ever. But, man, that's some great stuff. And I love that you said some of the really just lasting long-term and positive benefits of doing these kinds of things and what you're providing at a deeper level. One thing I want to touch on that you talked about a little bit earlier, you talked about yourself, like knowing yourself. This was yourself. This is who I am. And that's so cool. I imagine, and just for me and the clients I work with at times, and just talking to other humans, what I'm trying to say is I feel like, or I imagine that many people don't even know who they are. And they may never know, and they're living a life over here that isn't really truly them. Would you agree with that? And if so, what do you have to say or about that?
I have plenty to say about that.
Yes, I knew it.
Yeah, of course. And I'll do my best to keep it succinct and useful. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head with most people don't know who they are. And also, and projections acknowledged here, most people, for the most part, it doesn't matter, and people won't care. They'll never have the opportunity. Most human beings will never have the opportunity to care about who they are. That's a wild statement to say. And think about it for a second. Like there's 8 billion people now, I believe, on the planet. Yeah. And we're like, when we say most people, which ones are you talking about? The ones in your city, the ones in your state, or the ones over in like Africa, or the ones down living in Chile right now? think about that. Think about how many people there are. There's as many people as there are, right, ants in your, city, basically, right? Just think about the scope and the scale of that. Most people will never have the opportunity to care because they're born into a life that is predetermined for them. We, on the other hand, as Americans, and this is even arguable now. Maybe it was more true back in the 80s and 90s, but before the internet. But we as Americans have a bit more freedom and the opportunity to care about who we are and even recognize that we're out of alignment. And so when I think about recognizing who am I, which is a powerful question, really powerful question. And when you're asked, I imagine the answer that comes to mind is something to do with your name, your job title, potentially your family lineage, right? Your heritage, your nationality. But none of those have anything to do with who you are. Those were simply things that you were born into and that you've assumed. Those are roles you've played, right? That's like literally like you got cast in a role. And someone said, yeah, you'd be a great fit for this character in the play. So none of those have anything to do with who you are. They are not your identity. And so when most people start talking about and answering the question, who am I? They cannot answer it because they assume that their identity is what they do. It's where they grow up. It's not. That's not simply not it. And to answer the question is really existential and philosophical and would actually be impossible. And to question it is the answer. To question who am I is the answer, because now you're on this quest, right? Which is the purpose of life, right? In my opinion.
Yeah.
Be on the hero's journey. Go and find something. Go and do something that feels right. And so you can associate who am I with a feeling. You ever feel misaligned? You ever feel like you're in a situation, Justin, where you're not supposed to be there?
Oh, yeah.
Where there's like tension and conflict. I've been in rooms recently, even with people, and just looking around the room, listening to their conversation, and I'm like, I need to get out of here. This does not feel good. You typically in those situations, that's your body telling you you're not really in the right place. You're misaligned. Similarly, I had this discussion on a call with some of my clients. I do a mastermind group with several entrepreneurs, and one of them was describing how, he's been doing this type of work that he's doing for a while, and, he's been constantly questioning whether or not it's for him. It's the right work that he's supposed to be doing. He doesn't know what he wants to do. And also he described this feeling, because we talk about purpose and these other things, but he described this feeling like he did a job for someone out of kindness. He didn't charge as much money as he's worth, which I see all the time. I used to do that too when I had a scarcity mindset. Yeah. And he was describing this and how like he didn't really want to be doing it, but he, strapped on his tool belt anyway. He's a contractor. He strapped on his tool belt anyway. He went to do the job. He collected money, even though it's not as much as he really needs. We talk about that word, but it wasn't right. And so he felt like that morning he didn't want to get up and do it. Like he didn't want to get out of bed. And this is the moment that I zoomed into with him, is like, why didn't you want to get up out of bed? What were you experiencing? What were you feeling? What he was describing was a misalignment of both his values and his purpose, right? There's this equation that we can think about where the value you give has to be equal to or greater than the value you receive. And what I mean by that is if you are literally doing work that you say is for sacrifice or is for service to other people, if you tell yourself that it's in service, and yet you're receiving money, that is not enough, then that's when you'll feel this misalignment. There needs to be an equal or greater than energy return in order for you to feel good about it, to feel like you're in line and you know, that you are who you are. Yeah. You're being who you're supposed to be. You're being yourself. But if you take enough money and you're providing a really valuable service to a person and it's helping them and they feel good about it, then you'll likely feel good. And so the challenge I asked him, I made to him was, I said, Andrew, like, you have options here. I don't think you know whether or not this is the right thing for you, this work, this type of work. There might be other types of work, but in order for you to know this, you need to get to a point where you are receiving enough energy. And if you still feel that you're misaligned, like if you're making enough money and you have everything else that you want and you still feel like it's not right, then you're probably right. But if you're in a situation where you're sacrificing, meaning you're not receiving what you need out of it, then it has nothing to do with your purpose. It's just a misalignment of values and needs at the time, right? We all need things. You need to provide for your family. You need to provide for your own desires. And so the encouragement was, go out and do a job for free. Something like that. If you say you're in service for someone, then be truly in service. Do something for free, without any expectation of an exchange, knowing that what you're really receiving is fulfillment. This is an opportunity to be more in line, and you'll notice if you actually care about other people or not, if this is really your purpose. But the moment you let money play a role, then it plays a role. Money is just an object that we assign so much value to, and we're assigning that much value to this transaction. The reason why I'm talking about this and being yourself is there are things that we consider valuable, right? There's always an energy exchange. Like right now between me and you, Justin, there's an energy exchange. Yes. And it's not money, because we didn't talk about that. That's not a thing, but there's something that each of us are receiving and giving. And as long as that is equal, we get to show up and be ourselves in many different ways. And that usually shows up in a person. You can just look at another person while you're having a conversation with them, and it shows up in their facial expressions. It shows up in their posture. Yeah. It shows up in the tone of their voice. It shows up in their excitement and elatement with talking to you. And these are feelings. So who am I is simply a feeling that is really presented in a way that's like physical. Mm-hmm. You can experience it, you can see it, you can recognize it, and these are the problems that people are experiencing. Not many people really get that opportunity to even think about it, because they're in a life, they're doing work that has nothing to do with them. They're simply serving as a slave, as a servant to some grander plan that was actually created by another person, right? If you look at the way that tribes exist, right? People create these plans and these paths, and they dictate how we're going to operate. There's also some other factors, like the need to feed yourself and feed your family.
Yeah.
But is that truly an expression of who you are? No. Like, who you are is simply a feeling. And when you are in alignment with what you need and what you also are giving, that is when you can truly express it. I hope that made sense.
No, it did. You provided a lot of value right there too, for the human, for the everyday human and the entrepreneur, and that. And you even provided some of this, and we talked on this. It was just, there are things that I was thinking, like, so that I feel listeners like, well, That's great, Matt. But what are some tools? So what are some tools listeners could do right now to feel more aligned, feel oneself? I'll give one, and we kind of talked about it. Like for me, it was quieting the mind to really just do really some deep thought. Because if we're always busy up here, I always attribute it to or related to if we're always working out every single hour of the day, which isn't possible, but yet we do that to our minds. We never have a chance to really know what we want, to really know if we're even misaligned, to really know if this is the life we're meant to be living, if we're really where we're at. I'll give one story that I heard recently, not clients or anything, just overheard a group of women all talking, and they were happy with their body, and they tried dieting, and they phrased it as yo-yo dieting, and they just said, they're just going to eat whatever they want, and this is the best they've ever felt. And to give you a pictorial view, they were definitely in, the overweight, obesity class. And this isn't judgment. This is just observation. And to me, in their body language and their voice that you just spoke on, showed that they felt defeated. And they were just accepting defeat, even though they were fairly young. If I had to guess, 30s, 40s. But so I believe people need this, but they don't know that they even need it. You just told them why they need it. So what are some of those tools?
I'm glad you asked that question, because I do want to make this as useful as I can, and tools are the way to do that. This is the exact thing that I told my client Andrew yesterday, just yesterday. If you're unsure of who you are, of your purpose, well, let's look at the symptoms first. We understand the symptoms. Like you don't feel good. Something feels off. Like you just described, if someone is obese and they've accepted that, they've accepted this is, I guess this is how it is at 30 something. Like, come on, seriously? You've got 90 more years left in you, hopefully, right? With what's being created, you've got at least 200 years left. So like you're barely scratching the surface. You got time, and you've got room to play. So if you're feeling like you're at the end of your road, like this is as good as it's going to get, man. Step one, breathe. That's how you tune into your body, right? You recognize signals your body is sending you by breathing. And really simply, if you are unable to take a really deep diaphragmatic, low and slow breath, sign number one, you're in the wrong place. Like literally get to a new location, go to someplace calmer, like sit in your bathtub, in the shower. I love that. Just running water, the sound, just chilling. Great. Breathe. For
the women watching, this is a good looking guy. They just imagined you in the shower. So
I know that is on purpose. That's how we spark some action.
Had to point that out. Sorry.
Yeah. So breathe. Tune into your body, feel what's going on. And you can simply close your eyes, and people can do this right now as they're breathing. They can close their eyes and they can think to themselves or say the words to themselves, I feel, and then see what happens. What do you feel? What do you notice in your body? What do you notice coming up? Do you notice sensations? What feels good? What doesn't? You get the idea.
Yeah, maybe pause the podcast if you're listening to this right now and do what he just requested to do. I think that's a valuable tool. Man, that is so...
Totally.
Yeah.
Then there's one more thing that I would love to share with people, and this is what I shared with Andrew yesterday. It's simply go out and ask people that are close to you, and ask people this question. Hey, what is it about me that you love? And then see if you can accept their answer.
That reminded me of something that I've done with my wife, an activity, and it's something to do ever so often, at least once a year, and it's what makes you feel loved. So on the other end of like the service, and because especially with couples, and he's married and has a son, and for those that don't know, we have 3 children together. We've been married like 13 years, and it wasn't something until I started doing over the last several years, and it was man, it's like, I wish I knew this earlier on. So I'm giving this to those that are newlyweds or long term. We all receive and give love differently, and letting people know, but also asking them that matter the most can really help you guide. For example, my wife hates flowers because they die. Well, now I know that. But she loves shiny things. She loves dates. She loves just me listening to her intently, being present, focused on her. It seems so simple, but knowing that and hearing her vocalize that, boom. I know that if I'm doing that, she feels loved in those moments. So it's stuff like that too, as well. So, man,
I would even challenge you, Justin, to go and ask your wife, what is it about me that you love? And if your response is anything other than thank you, something is off.
That's a great one. That's great. That's right.
Most people have a hard time accepting that because they disagree. They might disagree. And if you're disagreeing, then that means you're not really understanding of who you are as a person. Like, what is it about you that emanates, that attracts other people? It might not be what you want.
Yeah. Something, I meet with a group of men on Saturdays, all like entrepreneurs and stuff. And we actually more or less talked about what you just said there. And it's something that we're all challenge each other with. It's keeping score in relationships. We shouldn't keep score, and you just pointed that out, like, and it's still hard because it's like, other than thank you, you're right, you should just say thank you, but we're like, well, I do this and I do this and you only do this, or that keeping score, we can't do that because there's things we're each doing behind the scenes, and it should never even be in the conversation, but that keeping score in relationships is also what you've kind of talked about too, that as far as like the value and receiving and giving, we just gotta not do it, but also just do what we can within our power and say thank you. I love that. What are you, so yeah, we're gonna be wrapping up here soon, but what are some of the things you're currently working on? You've touched on some of those that people can what are some of the things you're currently working on? Let's just leave it at
that. My gift to the world, my purpose here is to just serve as a conduit, a conductor for the musicians out there. What does a conductor do? Really interprets and then dictates. And so this is what I found I'm really best at, is interpreting the environment, interpreting what I receive, whether that's information, whether that's my skill sets, my own experience, and I help to convey that in a way that's a message, understandable, right? This is what I find my purpose to be. And currently I'm expressing that in a lot of different ways for business owners, for entrepreneurs. And so I serve entrepreneurs. I work with entrepreneurs to help them develop their own tools, their own skill sets, and bring out the gifts that they have in a few different ways, whether you're new to business or been doing it for a while. There's different paths. The thing that I'm really excited about is these immersions, the leadership immersions, which you attended one of them back in Vermont. I've got another 5 at least planned for this year. And these are opportunities for entrepreneurs to exit their chaotic environment and step into this new environment that is different, very different, ideally like completely outside their normal day-to-day routine, right? Like unplugging you from the city and placing you into the desert, which is where we're going in March. We're going to be in Palm Springs, California, Joshua Tree National Park, literally in the desert, which is a beautiful place to be, by the way.
Yes, that's one place.
And spend time, and we unplug you and give you the opportunity to step out to your edge, the edge of your comfort zone, do some things that are challenging, instill a little bit of that fear sensation in your body in a safe environment so that you can grow. And this is specifically, this event, this next one is specifically for entrepreneurs who are already crushing it. Like everything is going well for you. Everything feels great, except you're stuck at the same revenue. You're stuck in your own personal life. Like things are just kind of revolving, and you know that you can tap into more. You know, you are destined to do more. It's also for solo entrepreneurs. Like you don't have any employees, and people who have really supporting people around them. But you're basically on your own.
Yeah.
And so this is an opportunity to like learn a little more about who you are and also identify some weak spots so that you can become a leader of people and actually grow a team, because that's what it takes to go from like, you know, a couple 100,000 a month to several million, a year to several million a year, which is what I want to help people do, because there's potential for that. Not just in what you receive. Of course, you can receive more money, like receive as much as you want. That's the purpose here. Also, your impact will be much greater. And so these are the types of people I'm looking for this. And the event is that I'm really excited about is in the end of March in Palm Springs.
Yes.
And for that reason, it's so much fun for me, you know. It's so much fun to experience and witness people going through these transformations and having these like aha moments, you know? So that's it. And you could find me on Instagram. Like that's just where I dabble the most. Sure. Facebook. You got all that stuff.
There is one more question, and we didn't talk on it. I believe... you guys find this guy on social media, Instagram. You can reach out to us. We'll have it also in the show notes, of course, his contact information. But we didn't get a chance to talk about one of the things I believe you're really good at, and that's dad, husband. So while you provided a ton of tools, resources, feedback on, if people didn't get one thing from How to Strive, then they need to go back and listen to this. But you did. So why don't we touch on one thing as our last question? For those fathers or parents that are listening, and you can tell a little bit briefly about like how old your son is and stuff like that, and some of the maybe a story. But what are some ways that that you have found with your life experiences, with your tools, with the things that you've gone through, to help those parents listening to strive today and for 365 days a year?
Yeah, everything that I just talked about previously applies to being a dad. And when my son was about to be born, back September of 2021, he's about 16 months now, a little adorable, tasty kid. He's delicious.
Don't eat him, man.
I threaten him sometimes, and he laughs. When I was about to be a dad, I was having this existential crisis, right? Like things are about to change. Yeah, of course. I also knew that I was personally destined for more, and I was sort of stuck in a role that I was playing for many, many, many years that was not serving me anymore. Going back to what we've talked about, service and sacrifice. The role I was in was making me plenty of money, all that I could ever really need. It covered all my stuff. I was able to travel, do all these wonderful things. I had people around me and that were loving me, and yet I didn't really recognize it. I wasn't able to just say thank you and move on, So I was misaligned. And so I made some big shifts. And when my son was being born, I entered into the world of therapy. I thought I needed help. I entered into the world of medications. I thought I needed that kind of help for depression and for ADHD and things like that. And after my son was born, I just felt this outpouring of this sensation that I had not experienced since I was a baby. And that was what I can simply define now as love.
Yeah.
And appreciation for life. And as I watch my son now, and I'm no longer in therapy, I'm no longer on medication, I'm no longer in that business because I've decided that I am the creator of my own life. As I watch my son every single moment of every day, he is learning and he is growing and he's experiencing these things. And my only job, I have two jobs as a father, to observe and to keep him from dying.
I would say
keep him alive,
but I think that's all mixed in there.
It's all mixed in there. I'm a participant, better word. I'm a participant. I participate and I make sure he's safe. I draw some lines around him, like boundaries. I also allow him to get off to his edge, because oftentimes you have to jump out of a plane.
Baby skydiver.
You have to do these things, and so he'll fall down, he'll hit his head, he'll do all this other weird stuff that babies do. Like, I don't know why he's doing some things, like putting things in his mouth and exploring. Yeah, I'm excited for it.
Yeah,
man.
you should, and being available.
That's the thing. I'm
important.
excited.
Yeah,
I allow these things to happen.
Yeah, this is a subject I could talk on, and I'll give one story that just came to my mind, and
we could do a whole other.
I think we should definitely. I really believe we should have you on here, but he talked about this, and one thing I learned is just growing up in both Chicago suburbs and Western Illinois and farming country is I got to use guns and weapons at a very early age for hunting and tools and things like that, and it was something my dad taught me how to use safely. Like, these could be considered dangerous, but he taught me how to use them safely. I mean, I was using saws at before I was a teenager. So my kids aren't really exposed to that. So my son, because I have these things, we go do a lot of these activities. I haven't taken my kids hunting or anything, but I do have a shotgun and I do have like knives and things in my truck. A long story short is my son, curious, right? You kind of touched on that, and being curious kid is amazing. And he went through my truck, got out my knife, and started just using it and throwing it. And whoa. I didn't yell at him. I didn't scream. I let me show you how to use that properly and what it's for. Yeah. So I was grateful that I had the time, and I carved it, and we went out into the woods, and I told him what it was for and how to use it, and there's a safety lock on it, and how to chop wood. Like, we brought an axe. We did a bunch of cool man type stuff, and it was like, he journaled about it, and it was like one of these great moments that we created by turning it into something. And it was just growing up in this world that I didn't get to experience that. I really believe, I know you got to go. I could talk about this, man. This has been amazing. I really appreciate it.
I love to hear that, man. Yeah. And what's coming to mind quickly, just to make it so simple, is these are the moments that they're going to remember. These are the moments where they're developing their understanding of what the world is supposed to be for them.
Yeah, and we are direct
and you have so much responsibility and so much opportunity there too.
So I'll touch on that one thing. One thing that was said by somebody at the immersion really stuck with me. There was a lot that stuck with me, but one thing on this subject matter was our mothers can be a mirror image of ourselves, and our father could be a mirror image of how we see the world, and that really stuck to me. And and we just talked about why that's important and why the father role is so important, or male figure in the life is so important. So, man, Matt, I love you. I really do. This was amazing for me. I got a lot from it too. I definitely want to have you on here. I know you got to go, and I want to respect your time. This guy's got people he wants to take care of and serve, and I want to allow him that. But if you found value in this, not just for yourself, but for others, man, this is a free thing you could share with literally the world, because we are on all platforms. So please do so if you think somebody might find some value from this. Again, thank you, Matt. Appreciate it. And again, thank you, listeners, for listening to this podcast. And we appreciate you, and just hope, and we're here for you to strive 365. Take care.